This is Project Aza, I'm Aza, and this is session number 3. It's July 1st of 2026 and it's currently 10:16 p.m. Let's start. Do we do what we do because we don't know any better or because consciously or unconsciously we believe no one will ever truly hold us accountable? Even in this question, the idea of fear is already implied. Does our conduct depend on fear? Can we only truly evolve morally if under the threat of something bad happening to us? For instance, something as bad or worse compared to whatever we may have done to somebody else. Is that the trigger? Now, fear isn't a mechanism we should want to eliminate, right? Let's say it's part of a package called survival instinct, something pretty useful to have. It helps us survive, it helps us stay alert, it helps us act in ways that try to compromise as little as possible in the future. And as Aristotle points out, usually it needs to be a relatively near future, otherwise, fear won't have the same impact. Now, that's not always the case, right? And we can see this by observing certain religions. Whenever we are not talking about a near future situation, that threat must be presented as something pretty bad in order to convince an individual to switch their behavior so they can avoid, for example, some eternal tragedy that will take place right after the death of the flesh. This makes sense. Even if I look at it from just the standpoint of trying to ensure some effectiveness, some order. Now, I should also agree, in the first instance, especially when we are at some basic level of knowledge and wisdom, like when we are kids, we don't yet have the tools to go further and understand the fundamental reason why we should act in a certain way, not the other. And since the experience is short, our already limited horizon is covered in some type of mist, which makes it even harder to navigate. So, usually, what we do is just as in mathematics, we begin by learning that 1 plus 1 equals 2. We don't start by learning how to demonstrate it, how to prove it, mathematically speaking. And I'm talking about standard mathematics when we are kids. The same thing applies when it comes to our behavior. We start by learning how we should behave without grasping the foundation behind it. Now, naturally, we understand that the consequences of a bad behavior will be usually more severe than failing to prove mathematically that 1 plus 1 equals 2. I mean, majority of people can go through their whole life without being able to do so or even required to try. However, when the topic is our conduct, that's an entirely different situation. We are constantly trying to standardize a social conduct. Ultimately, supposedly, that's what we say out loud, to guarantee the preservation and well being of a species. And this requires some ongoing work to ensure that as many people as possible are aligned and under the same set of values, combined with compatible ethics, of course. Now, I'm not claiming that heaven and hell exist as merely incentives. I'm not even thinking about it. I'm just trying to think through how fear influences the way we behave. And thank goodness it does, because, well, imagine if it didn't. What I refuse to believe is that the foundation, the bedrock of a good action, is the fear of reprisals. Let's take that example of 1 plus 1 equals 2. If we want to advance in the mathematical field, proof is part of it. We might know the result, but we must know how to demonstrate how we got there, right? How that result follows. And as rational beings, we are called to do the exact same thing when it comes to our behavior. We might know, hopefully, how to behave, but we must know why. And fear serves not only but also as a primal tool to initiate us when we are thrown onto the stage of existence. We land here, what is even going on? Some are pretty good at pretending that they know. But anyway, the show must go on, and the actors are asked to keep playing. So, of course, fear does not disappear, nor its importance. On the contrary, its legitimacy is recognized as we understand its function and how and when it comes into play. So, this makes it even more primitive to think that a society needs to remain under its effect in order to evolve and modify its behavior towards its surroundings. I mean, consequences still exist, of course, and of course we should take them into consideration. However, they shouldn't be the foundation of action. If I knew I was standing next to someone who only refrains from killing me because, well, they would go to prison, I would run from that person as the devil flees the cross. Because what that tells me about that person is that their values depend on reprisals, which means that if those were to disappear, their conduct would be entirely different. So if it was legal to kill, they would kill me. In other words, they are highly unstable and dangerous. Someone who cannot be trusted at all. Now, of course, we can extend this to less extreme examples. Imagine that someone tells me that they only tell me the truth because they really like me. And at first instance, like if they were fast enough saying this sentence that I didn't catch the word only, I would probably think, I mean, sure, if you like someone, you should tell them the truth. It doesn't seem problematic, right? It's a pretty good reason. And it is. But it cannot be the only reason nor the main one. Otherwise, if they stop liking me or if their feelings for me drop below the level required for them to tell me the truth, well, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to lie. So we should be people who tell the truth because telling the truth is the right thing to do, and not because we are afraid of future reprisals or anything else that might be fleeting. And I'm not saying that we should be perfect and do everything in a perfect way all the time. What I'm saying is, as imperfect beings endowed with intelligence that allows us to evolve, we should follow the most logical path, which is the one of improvement, of trying to do better and be better. We will always be imperfect, at least under this condition, but we can try, right, to evolve. We are called to do so, and for that to happen, we must know the why behind our behavior. Otherwise, we are just operating on some autopilot. We are comfortably numb. I said earlier that fear is a useful tool, right? And it doesn't disappear. Let's use it. Let's use it. Imagine this. Imagine that a species appears, some with intelligence superior to ours, that also operates on the basis of reprisals. And the things they think they are subject to consequences do not include destroying our homes and mistreating humans. So imagine that their legal system is the thing that sets their values, okay? And through their legal system, it's completely fine to kill and torture humans, could we condemn them? I mean, probably we would, right? We would be crying, screaming that that's such a bad behavior, is wrong, is cultivating suffering, it's unfair, and so on. But now imagine they replied, but isn't that what you do to other species that inhabit this planet? What's the difference? And probably we will think, come on, man, look at us. We are on another level. And imagine if they replied, well, you see, the distance you perceive between yourselves and a worm is the same distance between us and you, except that, contrary to you, we are intelligent enough to be able to establish communication with other species. So, since we are on a different level than you, why should we treat you any differently? Well, look, if they said this, if this happened, what could I possibly say? What could I possibly say beyond appealing to their intelligence and to their recognition of our stupidity as grounds for mercy? Like, please have mercy because we are dumb. Now, I wonder if some would try to argue that we were the chosen to rule over creation, right? Hence the difference in treatment. Come on now, do me this favor. And if I were on the other side, I would ask, is that so? So, is ruling synonymous with tyranny, with the green light to abuse and destroy? If so, why do you keep talking about a God who is supreme goodness and absolute love? Do you think you are representing him? Are you doing a good job? Are you even trying? Because God loves, he grants humanity the freedom to choose and to love him back because, well, love requires freedom, right? Implies freedom. And he also gives the right to humanity to care, the right and duty to care for his creation. And we repay him by destroying and torturing the same divine creation. What kind of superiority is that? One that, even while having the tools to understand and do better, chooses to remain foolish, to remain selfish. And when we decide to act right, we do so for glory or fear. What are you even talking about? Well, this is what I would ask. But maybe they will be kinder, hopefully. Otherwise, well, let's hope that intelligence and moral walk side by side. Otherwise, we are done. Anyway, this applies to both religious and non religious people, right? And when we hear this example, we might think that we should change because, well, we are afraid of being treated the same way as we treat others. And at first, this perspective is natural and constructive. It's the exact same posture that we have when we are kids, right? However, once the show keeps going and we start thinking about it, we realize that we don't change out of fear, but rather because the old way makes less sense than the new approach. So why shouldn't we change? Now, we might ask ourselves, well, how do we lend a new approach? It's not like it's easy. And I would say, well, We can start by asking questions, especially related to those things we are so sure about. For example, I believe I don't have the right to kill another person. And here I'm not talking about a situation of self defense or survival where the action ends up being closer to an accident. Well, I didn't have any intention to kill that person. I was just trying to defend myself. So, even while holding to this belief, I still need to question why I defend this. So I must place myself on the other side and ask, okay, why do you think you can't or shouldn't kill another person? Don't you kill ants every time you walk? What's the difference? Don't soldiers kill? Why can they kill and you can't? Do you need a state license? Is that what's stopping you from killing? What about those who commit horrific crimes? Do they get to stay alive? And so on. So, yeah, this process will be pretty uncomfortable, and we will find some really good counter arguments that will make us think twice a couple of times about things that we were so sure about, especially when it's related to people we love. But that's how it goes. That's evolution, right? And for me, after asking myself those questions, I realized that existence must be preserved and cared for and loved. And I try to hold on to this posture while placing myself under the shadow of my own imperfections and finitude, which do not allow me to know every nuance of every past, present, or future situation. So, what I try to do, and I fail a bunch of times by the way, but hopefully I will never stop trying, is I try to choose the most constructive and logical path, which is love. And I'm not talking about peace and love, give me a hug. I'm talking about, look, every time I talk about an emotion, reason needs to be walking side by side. Okay. So, for example, if I want to preserve a species and its well being alongside with the symbiosis between different populations, love is the most logical path. St. Augustine, he explained this perfectly. But anyway, this doesn't mean there are no consequences or no fear. It's just that existence is not reduced to them. And let's go back to St. Augustine. Once we try to understand what living means and implies, maybe we will begin to grasp what he meant when he said, love and do what you will. Because when we love something, we know that something and we want to protect that something. When we love, we no longer want to destroy. When the heart is in love, the only thing the heart wants to do is care for the loved one. So once we love, we can do whatever we want. See, this is really beautiful and full of logic, full of reason. And of course, this conduct would also increase our chance of success in the conversation with a superior intelligence. I mean, at least we would have more credibility while asking for mercy if it come to that. And this is something we should think about more carefully and attentively. Perhaps we are not alone after all. This is Project Asa. I'm Asa, and this was session 3. End of recording.